This hearing of the Subcommittee on Biotechnology, Horticulture, and Research titled, To Review Implementation of USDA Farm Bill Research Programs will come to order. Thank you very much to the Honorable Scott Hutchins, who's here with us this morning. And I also want to thank the Chair of the full Committee on Agriculture, Colin Peterson, who's also with us as we begin. Before we get started, I'd just like to take a moment as a member of Congress, as an American citizen, to reflect on the passing of Elijah Cummings. Elijah Cummings was, of course, as we all know, not only a member of Congress, but the chair of the Oversight and Reform Committee here in this 116th Congress. He came to Congress many years ago, representing his beloved district of Baltimore. But I believe that he was much more than that to most of us here on this dais and here in this Congress, whether they be members of Congress, staff, lobbyists, federal employees, anyone who came in contact with Mr. Cummings. He was a gentleman. He was a better angel among many of us, oftentimes who wanted to be maybe not such an angel. He always operated with fairness, was always very thoughtful in his deliberations, always tried to find common ground, even in one of the most contentious and partisan committees that this Congress has. He worked across the aisle with individuals that people were flabbergasted at how he had come to have personal relationships with those individuals on the other side. And even among some of the members of his own caucus who didn't agree with him oftentimes in the manner in which he attempted to keep his committee above the rancor of what's happening here in Washington. He was really a mentor for me. This is my third term on the Oversight Committee. This last term, I waved onto the committee and sat right below him on the dais. And in sitting below him, I told him, "You're a good guy. I'll be the bad guy for you," because he was just always so kind. And many of us felt that oftentimes that may have been taken advantage of because he wanted to do the right thing all the time. But we know that the Father above is happy to have him with him now. And we pray for Amaya, his wife, and for his 3 children, and for his family, and especially for the people of Baltimore, as I know they're grieving as well, because he always represented his hometown, first of all. And with that, let us just take a moment to reflect on him. Again, thank you for joining us as we review the USDA's implementation of the 2018 Farm Bill research programs with Deputy Undersecretary for Research, Education, and Economics, Scott Hutchins. Strong investments in public agriculture research has historically allowed our farmers, ranchers, and rural communities to remain competitive and increase their overall productivity. These investments are more critical now than ever, with the agriculture sector attempting to adapt to a changing climate and manage for increasingly volatile markets. In June, I hosted a hearing in which members of this subcommittee heard directly from farmers and researchers about the need for continued scientific advancements. Their message was clear. Farmers and ranchers benefit from investments in public agricultural research and strong extension services. I believe that this subcommittee and the full House Agriculture Committee understands the value of trusted science. The 2018 Farm Bill emphasized our commitment to this cause and ensured that U.S. farmer and ranchers will have the tools necessary to deal with future challenges. This can be seen in the increased support for the Organic Agricultural Research and Extension Initiative, continued support for programs like the Specialty Crop Research Initiative and the Agriculture and Food Research Initiative, and the creation of new programs to support urban agriculture and students at 1890 institutions. My district has benefited from sustained investment in local researchers. Last year, the University of the Virgin Islands received over $3 million from the National Institute of Food and Agriculture, NIFA. These funds have been critical in helping my farmers and ranchers overcome challenges associated with climate change, tropical pest pressures, and resource management. Following passage of the 2018 Farm Bill, this subcommittee has turned its focus to USDA's implementation efforts. It's my goal to ensure USDA is swiftly and efficiently getting resources into the hands of researchers. At a time of continued farm stress, it should be USDA's top priority to support research efforts that directly benefit farmers. We cannot discuss Farm Bill implementation, however, without addressing what I believe will be a major impediment to USDA's ability to effectively administer programs and complete timely economic studies, the relocation of NIFA and ERS outside the National Capital Region. In a previous hearing, we heard farmers and researchers express apprehension about the relocation proposal. They cited a lack of stakeholder engagement and strong concerns over program continuity as reasons for their opposition to Secretary Perdue's proposal. Chair Marcia Fudge of the Nutrition Subcommittee and I sent a letter to the Secretary raising these concerns. I can honestly say I was disappointed in his response and failure to outline a clear, robust plan for how these agencies would prevent gaps in services. Unfortunately, I believe my fears are becoming true. This week, I received updates on staffing levels and status of fiscal year 2019 funding. ERS has appropriated funding to support 329 employees, but currently a total of 214 positions are vacant, a vacancy rate of 65%. NIFA is in even worse shape, it appears. Out of 344 appropriated positions, 264 of those 344 are currently vacant, a vacancy rate of over 76%. I was told these extreme staff shortages mean some grant recipients will not receive their funds until March of 2020. These gaps in service reinforce the notion that this relocation was hurried, misguided, and mismanaged. ERS and NIFA have been undermined at the very time these agencies require knowledgeable staff to implement Farm Bill changes, administer grants, and complete critical economic reports. Our farmers and ranchers deserve better, and so do the valued career public servants who left their positions within ERS and NIFA for other opportunities. As subcommittee chair, I expect ERS and NIFA to quickly be restored to their former prominence. Dr. Hutchins, the members of this subcommittee are looking to you and Secretary Perdue to work expeditiously and deliberately to prevent further gaps in service. This must be a top priority for you and Secretary Perdue, and I expect to see tangible results rather than hear of plans and other types of lip service. If results are not delivered and programs continue to suffer, we will continue this discussion in the future. Now I'd like to recognize the distinguished ranking member, Dr. Dunn of Florida, for any opening remarks he'd like to make.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I wish to associate myself with your very gracious comments concerning Congressman Cummings. Good morning and welcome. Dr. Hutchins, thank you for your service and spending some of your valuable time with us today. I look forward to your testimony and for the chance to hear an update on your progress implementing the 2018 Farm Bill. Those of us representing rural areas know that times are still tough for agricultural producers, farmers, and ranchers, and they face unbelievable risks from devastating weather events and market uncertainty and everything in between. It's important that we have a strong agricultural research infrastructure. We crafted the 2018 Farm Bill with this in mind. While we faced significant budget pressures, I'm proud that the research title was an area that saw an increase in funding and several positive updates to key programs that our producers rely on. Of particular importance to my state of Florida, the Citrus Disease Research and Extension Program was reauthorized and funded, continuing our commitment to fight the citrus greening disease that's still devastating the Florida industry and threatening Texas and California as well. I'm also proud that we secured important priorities for land-grant universities, including a new program to fund long-deferred maintenance projects and language streamlining some of the onerous reporting requirements. The Farm Bill reauthorized the Farm and Ranch Stress Assistance Network, reestablishing an important program that will direct behavioral health resources to our farmers and ranchers who are in need. Finally, I'm proud that the Farm Bill adopts several provisions to continue to provide resources and make a level playing field for the 1890 land-grant universities. Dr. Hutchins, I'm also interested in hearing an update on the relocation of the NEFA project and the Economic Research Service. Perhaps you can put some granular information in there about money saved and whatnot. As you know, we had a hearing on this subject just before you announced the Secretary's selection of Kansas City, and the work done by those agencies is important to the future success of the agricultural industry nationwide. As such, I'm sure you'll keep us informed about how that's unwinding. It's unfortunate we still see some efforts to derail the Secretary's decision in this regard. I'm afraid presidential politics has crept into even this, which is usually a very bipartisan issue. I look forward to working with you to help fulfill the USDA's research mission. Will do my part to ensure that you have the resources necessary. Madam Chair, I yield back.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome the USDA Deputy Undersecretary for Research, Education, and Economics, Dr. Scott Hutchins. In this role, Dr. Hutchins has oversight over the Office of the Chief Scientist, the Agricultural Research Service, Economic Research Service, National Agricultural Statistics Service, and the National Institute of Food and Agriculture. Dr. Hutchins received a BS in entomology from Auburn University, an MS in entomology from Mississippi State University, and a PhD in entomology from Iowa State University. Thank you for being here with us. We will now proceed to hearing your testimony. You will have 5 minutes. When 1 minute is left, the light will turn yellow as a signal for you to start wrapping up your testimony. Dr. Hutchins, please begin when you are ready.
Well, good morning, Chairwoman Plaskett, Ranking Member Dunn, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today to discuss agricultural research and implementation of related provisions in the 2018 Farm Bill. Excuse me. The Research, Education, and Economics Mission Area at the United States Department of Agriculture is an incredible team and powerful force for the good of U.S. agriculture. We have fantastic success stories to tell in a mission that is really never ending to ensure the long-term well-being of the American agriculture system as a provider of the most affordable, abundant, and safe supply of food and fiber in the world. The REE mission area is comprised of the Office of the Chief Scientist and 4 agencies, as indicated: the Agricultural Research Service, the Economic Research Service, the National Agricultural Statistics Service, and the National Institute of Food and Agriculture. Each of these entities provides unique products and services to U.S. agriculture and work as a team within REE. The Agricultural Research Service is USDA's primary intramural research agency. ARS has approximately 2,000 scientists and postdoctoral researchers and 6,000 additional staff supporting over 690 research projects at over 90 locations across the United States. These researchers produce an immense amount of scientific and technical knowledge in support of national agricultural priorities, and without a doubt, ARS has and continues to produce a wide range of scientific breakthroughs that benefit U.S. agricultural producers and consumers. The Economic Research Service continues to be a trusted source of high-quality and objective economic research to inform and enhance public and private sector decision-making. ERS reports provide information to decision-makers across the federal government and external stakeholders that create significant insights on agricultural markets. The mission of the National Agricultural Statistics Service is to provide timely, accurate, and useful statistics for U.S. agriculture. They conduct hundreds of surveys every year and produce reports on the entire agricultural sector, including production and supplies of food and fiber, prices paid and received by farmers, farm labor and wages, farm finances, chemical usage, and changes in the demographics of U.S. agriculture. The National Institute of Food and Agriculture is USDA's extramural research agency, providing funding and leadership to support research, education, and extension programs that address national agriculture priorities. NIFA primarily does this through competitive and formula grants. The competitive grants are comprised of different grant programs, with the largest being the Agriculture and Food Research Initiative, or AFRI. With AFRI grants, researchers across the country conduct research and find solutions to problems that face producers and consumers. Formula grants go to land-grant universities to support them in conducting agriculture research and extension. In addition to serving as Deputy Undersecretary, I oversee the Office of the Chief Scientist. The office supports scientific prioritization and coordination across the entire department and convenes the USDA Science Council. The council facilitates cross-departmental scientific coordination and collaboration and ensures that the department and its stakeholders are held to the very highest standards of intellectual rigor and scientific integrity. Across the RE mission, we are fully committed to supporting research that ensures U.S. producers will be able to adapt to changes in climate and continue to develop and advocate for a wide range of sustainable intensification practices. For example, ERS researchers recently published a study that examined the potential effects of climate change on risk management, and ARS published over 500 scientific articles related to climate change just last year alone. So to be clear, USDA openly supports and strongly encourages the work done by our scientists and all the agencies in these critical areas of our research. Pertaining to the implementation of the 2018 Farm Bill, each of the 4 RE agencies and the Office of the Chief Scientist were included in the Farm Bill, but the vast majority of the provisions pertain to NIFA. And some notable accomplishments in NIFA so far include publishing and updating matching requirements, charts, and indirect cost charts for stakeholders to inform changes from the 2018 Farm Bill made to NIFA's mini-grant program requirements. They've published the RFA for Beginning Farmer and Rancher Program Development, and I'm pleased to say those awards were just announced yesterday. Published the RFA for the 1890 Scholarship Program, which was championed by Representative Scott, with commitment to ensure that these funds are available for 1890 land-grant institutions. I'm also pleased to report that we recently completed the relocation of ERS and NIFA to the Kansas City region on September 30th. As you recall, in August 2018, Secretary Perdue announced that the department would be relocating a portion of these agencies outside of the National Capital Region whilst maintaining their headquarters in D.C. We are confident this relocation will improve USDA's ability to attract and retain highly qualified staff with training and interest in agriculture, place these important USDA agencies closer to many of our stakeholders, and provide a more efficient long-term operating model. At present, both agencies are focused on hiring for vacant positions and have already had success. Be assured that we are committed to both ERS and NIFA will thrive in their new location and continue their service to U.S. agriculture. In conclusion, thank you for your continued support of agricultural research, education, and economics at USDA. We do truly strive to fulfill Secretary Perdue's mantra of do right and feed everyone, and I look forward to answering your questions today about the 2018 Farm Bill. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much for your testimony and for being here again, for being here with us to answer these questions. I do believe in when you say that you are committed to these areas and that you want to have efficient and well-run research for our farmers and ranchers. I do have a question for you about some of the statements that you've made here. You says, despite USDA's assertion of the cost savings, the Agriculture and Applied Economics Association states that the relocation of ERS and NIFA will cost taxpayers between $83 and $182 million. Can you explain, when calculating your cost-benefit analysis, how did you consider the value of lost research from employees who chose to resign or retire? And did you consider the value of the resulting brain drain and loss of institutional knowledge when calculating that cost-benefit analysis? I know those are softer, more difficult costs to kind of recognize.
Yes, thank you for the question. So the USDA, to be completely transparent and to be able to be objective, utilize the cost-benefit approach where we use really only the facts-based information that we had. The costs that were associated here in the D.C. area, the costs associated in the new area opportunities, and really develop that in terms of a straightforward cost-benefit analysis. While it's true that we have lost some excellent talent in both of those agencies, we have every confidence that we'll be able to replace that. And we've made exceptional activities to be able to continue with some of those individuals that we're not able to do, some that have elected to retire and so forth. And so it is very difficult for us to put a subjective value on those kinds of considerations. And so to be transparent and fair and data-driven, we elected not to do that. We do believe that we will be able to build those agencies to the not only to where they were, but beyond where they were in terms of capacity and capability. And some of the considerable cost savings, over $300 million in nominal fees, will be reinvested in those agencies in order to ensure that that occurs.
And can you give us just an outline of just top level of how you, the objectives, how you plan to do that? At this point, I understand that there are significant gaps in personnel in some of those areas. How do you plan to ramp up as quickly as possible to continue to meet the objectives?
Thank you for the question. I've stated previously in the past two primary objectives I've had since we've been involved with this project. One was to take care of the employees as best we could and make the transition for those as feasible and as easy as possible, both those relocating to Kansas City as well as those who, for personal reasons or whatever reason, have elected not to do that. We've been very successful in both of those efforts. And then the other side of that, which is what you're addressing, is a continuity of mission. In the context of continuity of mission, we've done several things in the short term. We've worked with employees who are interested to return as retired annuitants. A number of individuals have elected to do that. These folks are whether they've gone to Kansas City or not, they're very, very committed to the mission of these agencies, and they wanted to have the opportunity to transfer their work, to finish their work, and to complete their work. So we've done that. The other thing that we've done is we've accelerated our hiring tremendously. We've had the benefit of having some opportunities for direct hiring authority. We've also had the opportunity to work with the Kansas City region to develop employment fairs and so forth to bring in candidates. And just as an example, some of the positions that we would typically recruit for, such as our program leaders in NIFA, we would normally have 50 to 60 applicants for that. We have those advertised now, and we're having 400 to 500 applicants for those particular positions. So it will take time to matriculate the government hiring process. You probably are aware of that. But we have no shortage of interest and no shortage of candidates, and we will work with all due speed in order to fulfill those gaps.
And when you say you'll work with all due speeds to do that, that's related on the hiring and the staffing, even in terms of the permanent principal office space. My understanding is that permanent office space has yet to be secured, and the agencies are still dramatically, some staff in Washington are working on extensions, and there are delays in terms of getting that permanent office space secured. Why is that?
Thank you for the question. Two clarifications on that. There are some individuals that are continuing to work that we extended their time period in Washington, D.C. They were working in some very specific areas that we wanted to make sure for continuity and mission that we maintained a bit longer period of time, not extensive, but 3 months to 6 months in order for those particular very specialized units in order to continue that work. That is not related at all to office space available in Kansas City. The folks in Kansas City have landed in the USDA building, the Beacon Center. It's a fantastic facility. It's up and running. I visited there personally on day 1 and day 2 when they arrived. And so they're very able to function in that capability, and we have a lot of opportunity to expand within that center during this hiring process.
Okay, I will ask my esteemed colleague, the ranking member, for his 5 minutes at this time.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Dr. Hutchins, again, thank you for being here today, and thank you for the updates on implementation. In the Farm Bill, we secured language expanding the membership in the Citrus Disease Subcommittee and secured an additional $125 million over the next 5 years for citrus research. Can you give us an update on the status of the Citrus Disease Research and Extension Program? Briefly.
Yes, sir, I'd be happy to. The citrus greening disease obviously is a tremendous devastating disease and situation in Florida. As an entomologist, I'm familiar with the parasilla and the situation of that, and for years we've been working to do everything we can to mitigate that loss. And this research and that program will help that tremendously. NIFA is ready to draft the RFA for this program. They've been working to finalize the subcommittee as part of the requirement, as part of the NARI board in order to do that. And as soon as that's completed, which should be within days, we will put those two groups together in order to develop that plan and develop those RFAs. I would also point out that while that is occurring, the research is continuing to occur. USDA has been supporting that in a tremendous area. The University of Florida has. Obviously, a lot of folks are working in this space.
I assure you that we have a keen interest in that research, and anything you can share with us going forward will be appreciated. Switching gears to the relocation, you recently visited the new center in Kansas City, and I'd like to have a little bit about your experience there on the morale of the relocated new employees.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was a tremendous visit. I've been there several times to Kansas City, several times now, and including the original site visits. And when I visited and arrived on day one and took time on day two as people were just getting settled in with their badges and those kinds of things, I took the time to visit every single workstation that was there, everybody, and visited with them personally. And what I was so enlightened and to see and to hear was how happy everyone there was about two things. One is about the fact that they're there working on their mission and that they're moving forward on that mission. Very eager to do the rebuilding that was referenced earlier and to do that and to take it to that next level. The other thing that I was really interested in hearing and seeing that they shared with me without asking was how much they enjoyed the region. They were talking about commute times of 10 minutes versus an hour and a half. They were showing us pictures of their homes that they would never have been able to kind of purchase in this region. One individual with a 6-acre horse farm. So everybody has a different story and everybody has a different living preference, whether it's urban or rural or what have you. But they were all all the ones I spoke to were very pleased with the region personally and very eager and excited about the professional challenge that they have, including the new employees. And we do have several new ones that are in Kansas City.
So very, very happy that our employees are happy because happy scientists do better research. Recent media reports have indicated USDA research into the ways that farmers and ranchers adapt to the effects of climate change has been hampered by this administration. Can you confirm that the USDA has no policy, practice, or intent to minimize or discredit or de-emphasize climate-related science carried out by the USDA?
Sir, thank you for that question. I can absolutely confirm for this committee that that is not the case. I've been with the USDA since January, and I have seen no evidence or no indication at any level under any circumstance.
And you're a user of it before then. So as a follow-up to that question, when the first media reports were coming out about this purporting that resistance to that, did you not send a memo to the leaders of the research agencies encouraging them to continue with the agency's research on this very topic?
Yes, sir, I did send a memo, but more importantly, my entire leadership team. So the agency leads for all of the agencies co-signed that, and we wanted our career scientists to understand that we are there to support them and that we support the research they're doing.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear that. So I want to close with a comment rather than a question. We carried a provision in the 2018 Farm Bill to eliminate a disparity in the way the funds were handled in extension activities between the 1890 land-grant universities and the 1862 land-grant institutions. However, we are aware that these funds are still being controlled by different sets of rules. Specifically, the 1860 extension programs are able to carry funds over for 5 years, and the 1890 programs are only allowed 2 years. Now, I know you're in touch with the land-grant institution stakeholders on the issue, but I would like you, going forward, to keep us informed here on this committee about why those disparities continue to exist. And with that, Madam Chair, I thank you, and I will yield back.
Thank you very much. You mentioned something about the agency not having changes in terms of climate research. There was a report that said that 0.3% of USDA's budget was going towards assisting farmers in adapting to climate change. I don't know if you agree with that percentage or not, but what are you doing specifically in your mission statement to support climate research and getting information to farmers on the ground? And after you answer that question, Mr. Cox of California will be next.
Thank you, ma'am. The 0.3, I can't say for sure where that number came from. I believe it was referencing specifically the climate hubs. But there's so much more going on within USDA in addition to and in support of the climate hubs. For example, within the RE mission area, we've identified our leadership team 5 significant themes that we're focused on across the agencies. One of those is sustainable ag intensification, and that includes a lot of things in it, but most prominent within that would be soil health, for example, and the ability to sequester carbon and those kinds of activities. We have have over 3,500 projects across our 4 agencies in R&D working just within the sustainable intensification. The other one is ag climate adaptation. We are committed to ensure that U.S. agriculture adapts to whatever climate scenarios present themselves. And we have over 580 projects across these 4 agencies that work in that space. So we are 100% in on making sure that U.S. agriculture is resilient and able to adapt to the climate opportunities that present themselves.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here, Undersecretary Hutchins. And so, just to follow up on the chairwoman and ranking member's point, is that so there is an overall acceptance that climate change is real and a factor that's influencing U.S. agriculture.
I believe the body of work, I've been clear in other testimonies in the Senate that the body of work is pretty clear that the climate is changing over time. And that there seems, and so the focus, I think, for agriculture, as I've indicated, is a real positive opportunity for us to do 2 things. One is to be able to mitigate to the extent that we can. There are a number of best practices. As I understand the climate report, the last one that was published, U.S. agriculture represents about 8.9% of the emissions, and we can improve on that. We can do better with a lot of best practices. So my focus, our focus in USDA, is to work with and develop those technologies and those best practices to allow agriculture to mitigate. But as I indicated earlier, our real focus is to make sure that we adapt. We'll mitigate as much as we can. There's a lot of factors within the U.S. and outside the U.S. that affect it, but we definitely need to adapt to it. And so we have breeding programs. We have a number of activities that are specifically focused to support our farmers in that regard.
Great, thanks so much. But and so I come from California's 21st Congressional District, which is ostensibly the top ag district in the top ag state. In a district that is as diverse as mine, as you can appreciate, farmers rely heavily on public research. And advances made by this research creates revolutionary tools, technology to combat pest and disease, and that's why California's Central Valley reigns as the most agriculturally productive region in the country. And one such group that's relying on strong support and expedient actions by the USDA are my citrus growers. Speak to Mr. Dunn there. And in the 2018 Farm Bill, the Citrus Disease Subcommittee was expanded and reauthorized through 2023. And the Secretary of Agriculture has not yet made appointments to this subcommittee. It's imperative that the Secretary make these soon in order to continue critical research to fight the HLB disease that currently threatens California and Florida citrus growers. When will the Secretary announce these crucial board appointments?
Sir, just to follow up with that same question, we have that in process. It would be within days that would be complete. I've already seen the draft, and then we will immediately move to have that completed. So we are advancing that. I would also ask that USDA NIFA is working with the Foundation for Food and Agriculture as well to convene a group to focus in this area as well. So it's a top priority for us, and we will have that subcommittee named and operational here within a few days.
Just so certainly by the end of the month.
That would be my full expectation.
Okay, great. And then more generally, President Trump, through executive order, has ordered departments to cut these vital advisory committees and reduce the ways in which stakeholders are able to engage with federal agencies. Can you commit to maintaining these vital committees and elaborate on the agency's plan for increased engagement with stakeholders?
Sir, I understand the executive order. We have, as I understand it, the department has gone through a review of its various departments, and the ones, including these, will continue in force.
Okay, well, great. Well, thanks for that commitment to have that subcommittee named within a few days. We'll look forward to that.
Yes, sir.
And with that, I'll yield the balance of my time.
Thank you. Ms. Hartzler, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Dr. Hutchins, you highlighted several benefits of relocation of ERS and NIFA to Kansas City region in your testimony, and I just wanted to underscore your efforts here and share our region's dedication to seeing that this is a continued success for these 2 agencies. Being in the heartland, we are very excited about this move and concur with you that we have the personnel that will be able to fill these positions. We're excited about it, and being there close to the stakeholders is really important. important. And so our farmers and ranchers support it. I represent the University of Missouri, and we are co-hosting a jobs fair there with you in November. And I am very excited for not only the cost savings that will be reinvested back into these agencies that will be very helpful for the research, but also the quality of life and just the product that will be developed there. So I commend you on your efforts. I stand ready to continue to support you, and would just certainly oppose any efforts to try to stop this forward progress that has been made. So keep up the great work there. I did have a question on another topic, though. You know, farm country is experiencing a lot of uncertainty, and the reestablished farm and ranch stress assistant network is a really important tool for many of our producers. So could you please shed some light on the status of this program and what impact you expect this to have moving forward?
Thank you very much. And let me just also say in return that University of Missouri, Kansas State, the whole region has just been fantastic to work with. They've been open arms. They invited myself and other members to join the Animal Health Corridor homecoming dinner, which we did, and just had a great opportunity. And everyone in that region and everyone outside that region, really the broader region within that area, is very excited about this. With regard to the very important program of farm and ranch stress assistance, that program has been reauthorized until 2023 at $10 million appropriations each of the fiscal years 19 through 23. And the 2019 Appropriations Act included $2 million for assistance program. A couple important points here. It does allow Indian tribes to be eligible for the grants, which is a very important aspect of this. The request for application was issued on June 25th. And I'm pleased to say, and with the deadline of July 25th of 19, and I'm really pleased to say that we expect those awards to be made next week, and they'll be implemented within our extension networks and within that area immediately. So it's a critical program. We know it's a difficult time in the farming communities right now, and really applaud Congress for having the foresight to build this and appropriate these kinds of funds.
Great. Thank you very much. I yield back now.
Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Brindisi of the Empire State. I'm a native New Yorker, so of course I always have to big up New York.
Thank you, Madam
Brindisi,
Chair.
5 minutes.
Appreciate that. Welcome, Undersecretary Hutchins. Like many members on this panel, I'm concerned that the land-grant university that serves my state, in this case Cornell, has experienced significant delays receiving NIFA funding. Cornell has about $5 million in projects that have been awarded, but that the agency has been holding on to the funds pending processing. These are pretty important projects on pest and disease mitigation and improving organic dairy exports. The release of NIFA funds this year will be, on average, an additional 2 months later than previous years. Why is this?
Well, as has been indicated, we do have an opportunity, we do have a hill to climb in the short term in order to ensure that we do fulfill and have everything out the door, as it were, with regard to NIFA. But we have committed to do that by March of 2020, and we've prioritized in the process of doing that. So we've prioritized, for example, the 1890 and the 1994 groups that have less flexibility and leeway. As important, what we've done is we've had great meetings and continuous contact with stakeholders like Cornell, as an example, to make sure that they understand what our situation is and that we can respond to any specific shortfalls or emergency issues that they have. We're committed to really fulfilling the mission this year. You know, I'm not going to sugarcoat the challenge that we have. I never have. We do have a hill to climb. We've done all that we can, as much as we can, to intervene, to bring in some temporary resources to help folks do it. I've been very pleased from the land-grant institutions have contacted us to say, how can we help you? We're in this for the long term. How can we help you? And so we're taking advantage of that. We're going to do all we can to make sure that every university that has money that's part of this process receives their money as quickly as possible and no later than March 2020. Some will actually receive it earlier than others. But we're going to make sure that that happens. And if there is a specific program or contact, we would encourage Cornell or whomever else to contact their NIFA representative or visit their website and find out how we can accelerate that situation.
Okay. So, but going forward, we can expect that you're going to take actions to minimize these delays moving forward.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. And let me just also add, if I can, that this is an opportunity for us with both of these agencies, but NIFA specifically, to really step back and look at the process. We've also received lots of feedback from the land grants all around the country about, the administrative burden and this and that and the other thing. So it's an opportunity for us to step back and say, can we do this better in the long term as we rebuild the staff? We also want to rebuild the process within, of course, the congressional rules to ensure that we can be more responsive, to ensure that we can reduce the burden of administration, and that we can be better servants to the land grants, which we're here for. So while we're working through the short-term challenge, we have an eye on the end game, which is to be a much better, more service-oriented, functioning organization. And with the opportunity, with the savings that we will have, we'll also have the opportunity, we believe, to actually do more research and to build more capability. And so we're building those kind of gold standards into where we go forward.
Thank you. And I just want to follow up, too, on the chairwoman's question about that recent report about the 0.3% of USDA's budget regarding climate change. And I know you said that you weren't sure where that particular number came from. But in that report, there was also mentioned that USDA has not actively promoted research related to climate change, and that the climate hubs have continued to operate with extremely limited staff and no dedicated resources. Do you agree with that report? And what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, sir, I do not agree with that report per se. The climate hubs themselves do have dedicated resources. They may not be congressionally mandated resources, but they are dedicated, and they've been in place ever since they were originated. But I also want to emphasize the point that there's a lot more going on within USDA than just the climate hubs. They're fantastic, but we have a tremendous amount of work going on in that space. In terms of the promotion, agriculture is one of those unique areas where every field, every situation is unique. And so what we have is a network through our extension service, through these hubs, and through other places where we can work hand in hand with farmers and growers to adapt the practices that are best for them. Those kinds of communications, that kind of teaching, that kind of mentorship, that kind of program is not amenable to press releases and things like that.
Sure.
So we're focused on being success and showing results, and that's where our focus is.
How do you disseminate that information to farmers and ranchers?
Many, many ways. The hubs themselves have aspects. Our extension service that's funded by the states as well as by NIFA is, of course, a key aspect of that. We have all kinds of partnerships with NGOs and with other groups that we all work together. I met just yesterday with a coalition of soil health groups. So there are multiple ways that we do that, and it is a key focus and priority for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Llamosa of California, your 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Welcome today. I'm, again, very pleased the effort made by USDA to go west, young man. And as the saying goes, Mr. Greeley, but I think it really, accessibility for people that are truly in the field is important. And I'll know from a personal experience, $500 plane tickets, $50 cab rides from the airport, $200 a night hotel rooms, and a cab ride everywhere around town. You know, it's not cheap for regular folks to get back here and try and have their little 15 minutes of fame. And so I commend the effort by USDA to move some of the operations. Do you identify other areas where more of these operations could be moved farther west? You know, California indeed is a strong hub of agricultural activity and research, and so many things that are happening there. We had a great visit with Secretary a few weeks ago out west in California. Can you see more effort that could be made in locating directly more USDA operations in California, in the west, or outside of Washington, D.C.?
Well, sir, thank you for the question. I have not done any kind of analysis in that regard. We are, of course, always looking, for example, within our ARS organization to see where we can strengthen, and we have a big major investment going in to strengthen the Salinas Research Station in California.
Good.
But I am not involved there are no active plans that I'm aware of at this point in time to look at any others. But if I may, I would just want to point out that while we are moving significant portions of both of these agencies, I want to just remind the committee that the headquarters for both of those agencies is staying in Washington, D.C. And what we did was a very deliberate process of trying to identify, actually the agencies themselves did this, what are the most appropriate aspects that should stay here and what would be the areas that we could move. And what I did, I think, first week on the job was I contacted director of the Centers for Disease Control, because I recognize that there are advantages to making sure that our agencies stay connected with the other science organizations. That's been a criticism, it's been a concern, and I recognize that. So I visited with Dr. Redfield for some time and said, look, CDC is a very highly respected science organization. It's in Atlanta. How do you do that? And so he was very gracious in sharing a lot of practices, a lot of approaches, and we incorporated all of those into our design. So NIFA, for example, for the folks in DC, will be spending virtually all of their time focused on those connections with NIH and with, FDA and with EPA and those groups. So we've thought through this very, very carefully. In the case of ERS, a third of the agency will remain here. And so that group will be working very closely with the Office of the Chief Economist and with other groups to make sure that their reports that are congressionally mandated are done on time. So I just want this committee to know that we have thought through this carefully in terms of the components that stay here and the components that would be in a better position and be more operationally effective and closer to customers.
Well, certainly you need to have a foothold here where many decisions are made, and it's a clearinghouse for a lot of that. But when you're getting right back down to research, the new technologies, and whether we're responding to changes in weather, and if we have been for decades in agriculture on my own farm, et cetera. I also want to emphasize the forestry aspect, as obviously U.S. Forest Service is a department within the USDA, and the extreme importance that the issues we have in the West are completely different with whatever holdings there is east of the Mississippi. And I know you're aware of that as we burn so many hundreds, thousands of acres every year, unfortunately. And we need much more action by the Forest Service to be inclined to do more on forest management and to continue to research what are the best ways. We have a pretty good idea what needs to be done down there, but that has to also reach through the bureaucracy to get the work on the ground, forest thinning, et cetera. So can you see that we have an opportunity to do more within forestry? Again, because, I've had entire communities burn in my district, and the threat of that is still ongoing all over the West. What more can we be doing in the Forest Service with this research or with the possibly relocating more of our resources in the West instead of here on the forestry side?
From a research standpoint, some of the steps that I've taken is invited Dr. Friend, who's the R&D leader for the Forest Service, because they do have their own R&D organization, to be part of our leadership staff in REE. So he's an adjunct member, and we want work to coordinate in that regard. Been a very great contributor in that way. I can't speak to personally anything in terms of the fire suppression or the fire aspect. What I can say is that forestry is a critical component of the overall climate aspect of things. And one of the factoids I learned when I came here, which is very exciting, is that every year about 1 million acres of farmland is converted into forestry land. And that's huge in terms of carbon sequestration. So as we are able to sustainably intensify ag production, it opens up the opportunity for us to increase forestry and to increase that opportunity to further mitigate climate impact.
Well, certainly it is a great store of carbon if we want to play that carbon game there. But I think that when we're looking at the inventory of trees we have per acre in our already overgrown forests, it doesn't just mean more trees is the answer. It means they have to be managed in such a way as that they're the right ratio per acre, et cetera. Madam Chair, I'm over my time, so I will gladly yield back. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Schreyer of Washington State, you're next.
First of all, thank you for coming today and joining us, Dr. Hutchins. I have to tell you, it's very refreshing to hear from a scientist, so thank you, I appreciate it. I also want to say how much I appreciate that we're having this hearing today, because in the face of climate change and competition and trade and increasing population growth, it's more important than ever that we have a strong, functioning, federally funded ag research arm in the United States. And I really appreciate also your comments about adaptation and carbon sequestration. I also wanted to share that I'm really proud to partner with Representative Bustos and other members of this committee to introduce the America Grows Act today. This bill will dedicate a consistent source of funding to ensure our world-class institutions can continue their work in leading-edge agricultural research uninterrupted. I also wanted to talk about staffing issues at ARS, and this time not just in Kansas. I ultimately don't agree with the relocation of NEFA and ERS, but I was pleased to read in your testimony that you have an aggressive hiring strategy, it sounds like together with universities, in place to address vacancies in Kansas City. But staffing shortages are a pervasive issue affecting local ARS operations throughout the country. And there are reports that as of the end of the most recent governmental shutdown, there were 270 open ARS positions in the Pacific West region, which includes my state of Washington. And nationwide, there are reports of 700 vacant positions, which include both scientific and support staff. And so there are a multitude of open and already congressionally funded positions nationwide that are caught up in this HR backlog. In our district, this includes a tree fruit research geneticist position that's been open since this past February, as well as a chemical ecologist position that served both the tree fruit and potatoes farms and has been open since December of 2017 at the Temperate Tree Fruit and Vegetable Research Laboratory in Wapato, Washington. So I was wondering if you could update me, how many funded scientist positions at ARS remain vacant, both nationally and within the Pacific West region?
That's a great question. First of all, and thank you for that question, I don't have those specific numbers in front of me. I'd be more than happy to get back with you on that, but I can address the question more broadly, if it's okay. First of all, we recognize that we have had and have for several years actually had a number of vacancies within ARS, and we are working diligently now to work that. We're specifically trying to rework our HR model so that we have the HR talent and capability to do that. We're bringing on contractors and dispersing, if you will, some of that HR talent outside of Washington where we have a hard time retaining HR professionals. Having said that, I did meet personally with the president of Washington State as well as the dean on these topics and assured them that we were prioritizing and focusing on that area. The Wenatchee system and so forth, the ARS partnership we have with Washington is perhaps the strongest we have in the country, and so we're very committed to that. One of the positions they asked about specifically, I can update as a plant pathology position. We've interviewed we had 40 applicants. We have 4 finalists. We're interviewing that next week, and we expect to bring that person on, hopefully by whoever the winning candidate is by the end of the year. The government hiring process is a fairly lengthy process. And so we're working and navigating through that as best we can, but we are committed to filling those positions. And in fact, as I've been working with my leadership team on this, we've identified a number of what I refer to as top 10 priorities, operational priorities, not so much strategic. And the one for ARS really is to develop and execute that hiring strategy so we fill these positions. So thank you for asking that question.
I very much appreciate that, and am happy to know that you're working closely with WSU. Do you have any sense of how many funded scientist positions have been cleared? We know about that one in 2019 to be filled.
To my understanding, again, I would want to get back to you because I want to make sure I don't mislead you or give you incorrect information. There are a number of positions that have been approved to fill, and we're working through that process. Again, these positions, these highly technical positions, we work through a process of not just the candidates, but through seminars and interviews and things like that. It's very similar to hiring a faculty member at Washington State. It's not a quick process, but we're committed to doing it and to doing it as quickly as we can.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And just with the rest of my time, I meet regularly with farmers and with Washington State University researchers, and they are deeply missing these partnerships. I look at it as my job in a non-Farm Bill year to be the best supporter of our farmers that I can possibly be. And so going to bat for them and getting the researchers that they need to help our farmers succeed and adapt to change, grow sustainable, increase their yields, and sequester carbon would be my dream. So thank you for working to fill these positions.
Well, we're in that together.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, my good friend, Mr. Davis of Illinois, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, and also to the ranking member, Mr. Dunn, for your leadership on this committee. And I appreciated my colleague, Ms. Schreyer's comments on carbon sequestration. I would welcome you to come to my district where we have a carbon sequestration project that's funded in conjunction with the Department of Energy. and also Richland Community College and a public-private partnership with Archer Daniels Midland, and also at the University of Illinois, which is very crucial to the ag research title in this that we're talking about in this hearing. We have a carbon sequestration center of excellence, where I got a chance to hold the Mount Simon sandstone, where carbon is sequestered, and it's just a great educational experience. I invite you out anytime, and I'll have my staff reach out to yours, but thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Mr. Hutchins, thank you for coming here today, and I had a quick question on cooperative extension. Excuse me. I believe in my rural district that includes a land-grant university and three other public universities, 4 private universities, that our cooperative extension service is one of our nation's greatest resources. It's unfortunate, though, that many states across the country, extension has seen significant budget cuts that have really hampered its ability to assist farmers and ranchers. In recent years, Congress has given extension some modest increases, but in your opinion, should we be doing more?
Thank you for the question. Extension is really a hallmark in many ways of the success that U.S. agriculture has had. The tripartite mission of the land-grant universities of research, teaching, and extension are all 3 critical. In a general sense, I would love to see us expand on the extension model. I've had many great friends at the University of Illinois as extension specialists, and I know that particular system has had some declines in terms of its specialists because of funding and the rest of it, but yet still does a great job of serving its customers. I would love to see us build up. Now, what we should be doing at the same time, just as any situation, is we should be exploring, as things have changed, as we become more digitally oriented and these kinds of things, can we approach extension in a different way? Can we ensure that we're delivering that information? The land-grant colleges, through their education mission, is doing a great job of developing some really tech-savvy individuals. And so precision agriculture, as an example, or digital farming, is going to be tremendous. It's already there, but it's going to expand exponentially. So to have people that have the ability and are not afraid of those kinds of technologies, if you want to think of it that way, and really embrace them and experiment with them and have extension there to work with them to make sure they know the newest and the latest and build the science into their practice is tremendous opportunity.
Is there anything that you believe your research agencies at USDA can do to more effectively partner with them to save resources and still get a better product?
Well, there's a number of things that we could do, and we will explore that more completely. But specifically, I think what we would do is want to make sure that we focus on a couple and several key themes that we work with across agriculture. And I've already mentioned a couple in terms of sustainable intensification and in ag climate adaptation. But the opportunity to ensure that the 4 agencies of the REE mission area working together and developing a common set of practices, and then working specifically to deliver those to the farmer and working hand in hand. As I alluded to earlier, one of the great things about agriculture is every farm is a unique scenario. And so every farmer has the opportunity to do some experimentation and to understand how these technologies best fit with them without, pardon the pun, betting the farm on any particular new technology or any particular new area. So I think there's tremendous opportunity there for us to improve the delivery of tools, and we will certainly explore that.
Well, thank you. Real quick on another subject, in regard to the Specialty Crop Research Initiative and the Citrus Disease Research and Extension Program, it's one of the few programs that does not give the Secretary the authority to waive the match requirement. I know that we, in bipartisan way, addressed some of these issues in the past Congress to allow that to happen. We secured that language in the recent CR that gives you that waiver authority. I'm hopeful that this language will continue until we can correct it in the next Farm Bill. But if this language continues through the next grant cycle for the SCRI and the citrus program, how do you anticipate USDA will implement that waiver implementation?
Thank you for the question. Certainly, we heard from a number of stakeholders about the matching scenario, as I know you have, Congress has. And so we worked as best we could with Congress and everyone to make sure 2 things. There were some grants that were caught up in the kind of the shutdown period, as it were, that we were able to have released. And then, fortunately, thank you very much for having the, if you will, the legislative fix put into the recent continuing resolution. So it's our intent in USDA to continue and grant those waivers and those exceptions so that with that important specialty crop research can continue. Because their scenario is one where they don't always have a great pool of matching fund opportunities, checkoff funds and the like of it. So it's very important that that research occur.
Well, thank you, and I see my time is up. And Madam Chair, thank you. You're doing a great job, especially compared to the last chairman of this subcommittee.
That's not hard to do. Thank you for that. Ms. Pengree of Maine.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you so much for being with us here today. I appreciate your testimony, and I appreciate your communicating with the committee. I have been in strong opposition of the relocation of NIFA ERS, and I've had the opportunity to be in several discussions about that, also serving on the Agricultural Appropriations Committee and talking it over with Secretary Perdue. So many of my concerns about this have been voiced. And while I totally appreciate Mrs. Hartzler and why those members who are having it come to their district should be very excited, I only look at this right now as bringing a lot of chaos to a very important department. I don't need to go through everything that's already been said, but the staff vacancies are extremely high, and there's just no way of sugarcoating this. I'm glad you have new applicants, but it's clear that whether it's putting out grants or the reports, they're being delayed. And I just wanted to mention, when we talk about these 38 reports that are currently known for being delayed, these are things like consolidation in the dairy industry, food security among veterans, international agricultural market access. Some will be delayed and even discontinued, such as price spread, which calculates the percentage of food dollars that goes to farmers. So I'm just deeply concerned about the delayed reports, about ones that could be discontinued, about just general chaos. We had multiple former leaders of NIFA ERS that came before the Appropriations Committee to talk about how devastating this was going to be. And while, as I said, much of that has already been discussed today, I just want to continue to express my displeasure at this and my deep concern that this has added voices to this question about is the Department of Agriculture still behind serious research, and that's some of what leads us to these climate change questions. So I may submit some questions for the record just to make sure that I can verify some of the numbers about the vacancies and the other things that you've been mentioning to us, because I continue to hear that there's still a lot of uncertainty. I do appreciate in your testimony, you stated that the USDA has no policy, no practice, no intent to minimize, discredit, de-emphasize, or otherwise influence the rigorous climate-based science of any agency or partner institution. So, I'm just really pleased you'd come in this room and say climate change, because often that's just not even said in the midst of the challenges that we are going on. I appreciate you saying that you're not minimizing the science and you are prioritizing it, but I do have to question some of these numbers around the climate hubs. I've spent a lot of time both visiting climate hubs and looking into the numbers, and I just want to quote a few for the committee's benefit. In 2016, $1.2 billion was devoted to climate hubs within the department. This is aggregated from several different departments. There is no line item fund. And in 2019, the estimate is $512 million. That's cut in half. The bulk of that funding comes from the Department of Forestry, and most of it goes to forest resilience. And I'm a forested state. I care deeply about that. But if you take out the forestry money, in 2016, $11 million went to the climate hubs, and in 2019, it's $9.8 million. That, whether it's 0.3 or point almost nothing, infinitesimal, that is not a lot of money devoted to climate change, climate resilience, helping our farmers prepare for this, things that are already happening to them, extreme weather, better ways to sequester carbon in the soil. I meet with farmers and scientists all the time who are hungry for information, support, technical assistance, and there's no way to sugarcoat it. The department is falling down on this, and the research isn't getting done. It's not getting out to the farmers. And while, you may say we're not neglecting it, I do not think it could possibly be seen as a priority with these minor funding figures and, frankly, a very difficult journey to even find what reports have been produced, where they are on a website, how they're available. So I'm going to give you my minute to answer me, but I also would like to see in writing, what climate reports have been put out, how are they being made accessible, and how are you reaching out to farmers to get this technical assistance they need?
Thank you for the questions. First of all, I would just reiterate that the department is doing a lot more with respect to climate than simply the climate hubs. The climate hubs was a great jumpstart, and it's a great system, and I have nothing but positive things to say about it. But I don't want to diminish the fact that this mission area in particular and other mission areas are doing a tremendous amount of work in support of and in partnership and in addition to those climate hubs. So the resources that are being dedicated to this are much higher than that number that you stated. So we'd be happy to share that in greater detail. If you want to see the kinds of output that's coming from this, if you just, for example, go to Google Scholar and put in NIFA and climate, you'll get over 4,000 reports and 4,000 hits of things that have happened just since 2016. So there's a lot of work out there. Now, that kind of information, as I indicated earlier, is best transmitted person to person. I know that you would appreciate that, person to person, extension to farm and so forth. But there is no attempt or no effort whatsoever to diminish that, and we are aggressively pursuing the research, but also the use of the research for practical improvement.
I apologize because I'm completely out of time, but I will follow up with you, and we'd be happy to see, some sort of a written document that shows what many of these reports are. I completely agree with you. Being able to deliver that information farmer to farmer is important, but I also hear about huge staff vacancies in the Cooperative Extension Service and NRCS. And many of the vehicles where this would be delivered, it also belongs on the website in a comprehensive way. Farmers are searching the web just like everybody else, and they shouldn't have to go to Google. We have the USDA. This should be readily available information for them. I really apologize. I'm a minute over, but I will personally contact you and give you much more time to follow up with me directly. Thank you for being here today, and thank you, Madam Chair, for indulging me in my extra minute.
Thank you. Mr. Comer?
Yes, Dr. Hutchins, I'm going to begin my questioning talking about hemp. Hemp is something that I've worked very hard on over the past 5 years and something that has become a major crop in Kentucky now. In August, EPA announced they're working on approving 10 pesticide applications for industrial hemp in hopes of getting them through the approval process before the next growing season. My question is, has USDA been involved with the EPA in conversations during this process?
Thank you, sir, for the question. Actually, NIFA has funded the IR4 program, and it includes hemp. And so they have conducted, or they're in the process of conducting studies to incorporate hemp within its priorities for IR4, which is considered a specialty minor crop. So at this point, unique crop. So there's 5 projects, 2 deal with residues and 5 deal with efficacy associated with pesticide use and appropriate pesticide use within hemp.
Well, hopefully we can get those approved before the next growing season. I know that it's a new crop. We're learning a lot about it, but there's still a lot of questions and a lot of challenges for our farmers growing it. So I wanted to throw that in there. Next question, the 2018 Farm Bill under the Critical Agricultural Materials Act, hemp became an eligible study crop for certain grants and required USDA to report on the economic viability of hemp production. Can you provide a status of this?
Yes, sir, I can. The Industrial Hemp Research Study conducted by the Economic Research Service has developed a cooperative research agreement with the University of Kentucky, actually, for the completion of the study, and it's in the early draft at this point, going through review and peer review. So we will have information on that. The other thing I would report to you is that NIFA has solicited applications for National Research Needs and Extension Assessment and has granted that with Colorado State and are developing a research conference. The other thing I would add to that is USDA ourselves, our mission area, developed a symposium within USDA to begin to teach our own organization about hemp and the opportunities. So we brought in experts on pest control, on agronomics, on genetics, on those kinds of things so that we can start to ramp up our own internal knowledge in this crop so we can best support our producing community.
Okay, great. I represent Murray State University, which is a non-land grant university in my district. It has a great agriculture program. I'll put that ag program up against any land grant university in America. They have over 1,100 agriculture students at Murray State, and they're leading the way in reinventing agriculture hemp and really driving force in economic development in western Kentucky with so many hemp companies that have domiciled in that area because of the research that Murray State's doing with hemp. USDA through the NIFA has many different funding appropriations. One such appropriation is the non-land grant College of Agriculture Capacity Building Grants for $5 million annually. Murray State has received 7 of these grants over the past few years. An important fact is that this funding is competitive among 58 qualifying institutions. Comparatively, the land-grant university budgets are massive compared to this, and the 1890 colleges received $19 million in education grants and $58 million in research grants divided among 19 institutions. Yet each year since I've been here, I've supported this initiative, but the House Ag Committee and/or Senate Ag Committee must add back in this comparatively small amount of funding for these non-land grant colleges since it's left out of the OMB USDA president's budget. What can we do to get it in the budget request, and how can we get more support for this very important agriculture program at the non-land grant universities?
Well, sir, I'm not sure I know how to talk about the, how to advocacy, but what I would say, I'll say more generally, is while the land grant system is a tremendous system and it's served us extremely well and will continue to do so, what we're learning today is a lot of the discoveries, a lot of the things in agriculture in the future are coming from places that we would not have predicted previously. And,
right.
And the science of agriculture is much broader than perhaps it was 20 or 30 years ago. So I think the general notion that we should have more of an abundance mentality on where some of the discoveries and where some of the research and so forth can do, I think we can make a compelling case in that regard, or certainly universities like Murray State can do that.
Well, I'll conclude by saying that, again, Murray State's just on the cutting edge of hemp research. More and more private companies are locating in that area to do partnerships with Murray State. And I just think that if we look at our budget that we appropriate for the land-grant universities, I think it would be okay to reevaluate some of the work and have a little bit more accountability from some of the land-grant universities and see if they're actually providing a good return on the investment, because I know that Murray State and some other non-land-grant universities are really making a difference in agriculture today, and the discrepancy in funding that they get compared to the land grants is really mind-boggling. But thank you for being here today. Look forward to working with you in the future, and I yield back, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Carbajal.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Undersecretary Hutchins, thank you for coming here today. I must say I'm extremely pleased to hear you being true to your science background and acknowledge climate change and the challenges that agriculture is enduring as a result of weather changing. California Polytechnic State University, San Luis Obispo, also known as Cal Poly SLO, located in my district, is home to one of the nation's leading agricultural programs. I recently had the pleasure of visiting it, visiting the Cal Poly College of Agriculture, Food and Environmental Science, where nearly 6,000 acres of agriculture production, processing, and research land and facilities are available to students. During my visit, I spoke with their staff and faculty and toured a number of centers of excellence. These centers are able to continue their impressive work in part due to the critical partnership with NIFA and ERS. What stakeholders, if any, were consulted for the move that NIFA made?
Thank you, sir, for the question. Secretary Perdue announced the move of NIFA in August of 2018, and I joined the department in January of 2019. So I honestly do not know of that consultation process that occurred. I do know it was a deliberate process, and it was one that they felt like fulfilled, a strong value proposition overall. But I can't speak personally to the exact consultation process.
I would appreciate it if you could get back to me in writing to share with me what that process was entailed, and if any California stakeholders were included. That would be helpful to understand.
Certainly.
On another issue, following the legalization of commercial-scale cannabis cultivation in California, there has been significant development of medium and large-scale cannabis cultivation operations within my district in Santa Barbara County. Many of these operations have replaced traditional agriculture production, both within greenhouses and open field settings. In many cases, this cannabis cultivation is immediately adjacent to continued traditional agriculture production, and a number of concerns have been raised about impacts such as the potential taint of adjacent crops, such as wine grapes, as well as issues related to direct and indirect pesticide exposure. It is clear that more research is needed to allow both the cannabis growers and their neighbors in traditional agriculture production to adjust to this evolving industry and make sound science-based decisions. Given the disconnect between federal and state laws regarding cannabis, are there ways that USDA can help and support research in this critical area?
Well, thank you for the question. You've raised, I think, several fair technical hypotheses that could be tested in terms of is there a adverse effect in one way or the other from the proximity of a new crop like this to that, and those can be tested. We can certainly explore the possibility of that and try to understand that and those concerns more directly, and so we can follow up on that.
I would appreciate it if we could follow up on this issue together.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I yield back.
Thank you. Mr. Baird, you have the next 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I would just say to Undersecretary Hutchins, thank you very much for being here. Purdue University is my alma mater, and it's also within my district back home, and so we appreciate the agricultural community very much. A major share of my district is agricultural oriented, and certainly Purdue and the research that's conducted there and the research that's done by the Agricultural Research Service is extremely important to helping our producers turn out the kind of crops that we do. I might just mention to you, we're heavy into the harvest season. We are having yields better than anticipated. We had a wet spring, and so we have worked through that. So I guess my question is to give you an opportunity to talk about the relationship between the Agricultural Research Service and all of the other entities that are the National Agricultural Statistics Service and all of those, NIFA, and that relationship with universities, land-grant universities like Purdue University. And just give you an opportunity to comment on that. And in that conversation, if you would relate your impression of the significance of the Cooperative Extension Service. We have that all across the United States, and they do a great job in the education arena. So if you would care to do that, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Happy to do that. First of all, very familiar with Purdue University. My youngest daughter is a Boilermaker, so I know that institution.
Now we're making progress.
Yeah, it's a great institution, and the folks who are leading it, Dean Plout and President Daniels and so forth, are fantastic leaders. So really, I really enjoy working with them. What we have in the United States is a very special situation. We have a situation where the federal government through the USDA and the states through the land grants and the non-land grants, to the earlier point, all work together with a common focus on producers and consumers. And it's an extraordinary system, and it's exemplified, I think, within this mission area where the Agriculture Research Service has scientists and laboratories embedded within a number of universities, where the entire NIFA organization administration is really focused on the success of land grants and getting the best from them in terms of research and extension and so forth. And then certainly the states work very closely with the National Agricultural Statistics Service, and the Economic Research Service is really rounds out just a fantastic mission area in partnership with that. I rarely see dissent or disagreements or conflict across that ecosystem of agricultural research and development. And I think it's just something that we should all be very proud of in the United States, regardless of party or side, in terms of how well it works and how well it has been supported. So I can't say enough about how important that infrastructure is. I know I've heard Secretary Perdue say several times that if other industries had been forethoughtful enough to establish systems like the land grant institutions and extension and that kind of built-in progressive approach, with progress always being on the front end, that we would be in a different place in a lot of these industries that are losing jobs overseas and so forth. So can't say enough good things about it. And again, it's a tripartite mission. You'd mentioned extension. It's a critical one. And without that, the teaching and the research really don't have an outlet. And so that's why that particular area is critical. I do think, as I've said, as things change in terms of digital ag and connectivity and all these kind of things, and the way farming is going to be not just now, but the way it's going to be in the next 20 years, the extension model, the principles are forever, but the model in terms of how we communicate, how we deliver, will perhaps be changing or adapting.
Thank you. Mr. Panetta, you have the last 5 minutes of questioning,
Outstanding.
sir.
Thank you.
Make it good.
I'm sure everybody will appreciate that. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ranking Member Dunn. And also thank you, Undersecretary Hutchins. Appreciate you being here and appreciate the preparation that you've taken to be here, as well as all of the work that you have been doing. And yes, the work that you will continue to do. Thank you very much. And I wanted to thank you personally for the meeting that I had with the Economic Research Service staff to discuss specialty crop mechanization review. They came to my office after we called them, and I appreciate that, just to let you know. But we had to talk about the specialty crop mechanization review mandated by Section 7610 of the 2018 Farm Bill that I was a part of, and trying to push them along to get the report, and they were very motivated, I found, after that meeting to do the report. So that gives me confidence, and I'm sure gives you confidence in your staff, as it should. But it doesn't take me to tell you that, I'm sure. But I'm just wanted to make sure that as we move forward in that type of report, especially dealing with something that's so important to my specialty crops out there on the central coast of California, otherwise known as the salad bowl of the world, that everybody in this room has heard me say a number of times. Are you working with members of the specialty crop industry to ensure that the efforts on this review align, match up with the ongoing work to mechanize and automate as we go forward? Obviously, with our specialty crops, we can't just, at this point, we don't have the machinery to send it through, and so we rely on people to come to this country, because no domestic workers will do that, to harvest our crops. Unfortunately, with the rhetoric around immigration and the lack of immigration reform at this point, we don't have that, so we are turning to mechanization, not to replace labor, but to replace the lack of labor. Let's make that clear. Obviously, we want USDA to play a big part in that, and so I want to make sure that you coordinate with private industry as much as you can, so that everything matches up when we go forward and to have this kind of report.
Yes, sir. I certainly support that. Having spent my first career within the private sector, I fully recognize the importance of having the public and the private sector work together in this to solve the biggest challenges that we have in agriculture, and certainly labor availability is one of those challenges.
That's correct. And now, are you working now with not just labor availability, but in regards to the mechanization report, you were going to work with them on what type of mechanization and investments are necessary?
Yes, with the report and the information from that, we certainly will utilize that information as a way to kind of steer our direction and do the best that we can with the resources that we have.
Outstanding. Now, obviously wanted to show our appreciation in regards to the announcement yesterday by NIFA in regards to the 32 grants totaling $14.3 million, 30 grants totaling $24.1 million through the Organic Agriculture Research and Extension Initiative, OREI, which I'm sure you've heard about today, as well as the Organic Transitions Program. A couple of organizations in my district are going to benefit from them. The Organic Farming Research Foundation, as well as the Agriculture and Land-Based Training Association, otherwise known as ALBA. They obviously rely on these grants, and they've been, taking a few steps because of that reliance to, and some investments that they've already made because of those grants, and so they are awaiting those grants. Now, obviously, there's a delay that you know about when it comes to those grants that was mentioned. And I was wondering if you can elaborate a little bit more for the reason for the delay on those grants.
Sir, I don't have the specifics on those individual grants, but I can certainly come back to you on that.
I'd appreciate that.
More than happy to do that. What I can do is follow up, of course, with NIF. I know that they have prioritized that area as a high area of interest and focus, and we certainly are aware of your interest and your stakeholders' interest, and I will commit to do that.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Like I said, I've found the response from you and from the employees underneath you very good and very responsive, and I hope that we can continue this type of relationship, especially as you move forward with the transition to Kansas City, unfortunately, as I may add, but also knowing that as long as there are people there that pick up the phone and continue to do the work that we need them to do, especially when it comes to agriculture research, there will be appreciation shown by us in Congress, but also hold you accountable as well.
Yes, sir, I would expect that.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. I yield back.
Thank you. Before we adjourn, I'd invite the ranking member, if he would like to make any closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I just want to say thank you to you for calling this hearing. It's been very enjoyable to have a chance to hear from our experts. And as always, enjoy serving with you on this committee. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Dunn. Thank you so much, Dr. Hutchins, for being here with us and for your testimony and your willingness to answer questions. I do believe, and I think you've seen here, that we all want the best for the Department of Agriculture. I'm grateful for your willingness to be very transparent with this committee and talk about the issues that you've had and your attempts and what you're doing to create a road forward for the agency and for particularly the departments that you have oversight over. I am concerned, and I think the numbers speak for themselves. ERS has a 65% vacancy rate. NIFA has a 76% vacancy rate. There are 478 total positions are vacant, and grants will be several months delayed. In that, however, I think you've heard from members on both sides, and I believe you as well on this committee, as the members of this committee, are trying to do what's right for farmers, fishermen, ranchers, and the people who rely on the goods and the services that they bring into the market. We didn't agree with the move, but the Department of Agriculture, Secretary Perdue has moved forward. And so what this committee is asking for is not only just a plan from you on how you intend to meet the needs of those agencies, but also to hear directly from you about how we can assist and how we can help and make that happen. I'm not sure, and I haven't been able to ascertain from your answers whether or not this was really a well-thought-out plan or this was something that came about and you all had to really put this together and make it work. But be that as it may, it is what it is. And at this point, I, as the chair of this subcommittee, really offer ourselves to give you as much support as you need to make sure that the research and the work that is done by by that agency and by those departments really moves forward expeditiously. So with that invitation to you and your staff to meet with us as members and the more than able staff of this subcommittee. This hearing, just want all of the members to know that under the rules of this committee, the record of today's hearing will remain open for 10 calendar days to receive additional material and supplementary written responses from the witnesses to any questions posed by the member. There were a lot of questions that people had and some information that you as well said you would get back to us, and we look forward to that. At this time, the hearing of the Subcommittee on Biotechnology, Horticulture, and Research stands adjourned. Thank you.